Prologue. Wop wop in the morning mist. Long before soldiers glimpsed its olive-drab silhouette, they heard it. A deep, rhythmic wop wop rolling over rice paddies and jungle canopy. The sound signaled salvation for the wounded, fresh ammo for beleaguered platoons, and in darker moments, a one-way ticket to the battlefield. Officially the Bell UH-1 Iroquois, it became simply the Huey. From 1962 to 1975, more than 7,000 Hueys flew in Southeast Asia, logging an estimated 10 million flight hours. They inserted troops, evacuated casualties, sprayed defoliant, delivered hot chow, broadcast psyops, and carried chaplains, generals, and occasionally Bob Hope. No other aircraft so thoroughly rewrote the doctrine of modern war, or seared itself into popular memory, as the Huey over Vietnam. This feature revisits the machine's origins, battlefield evolution, and post-war influence, weaving technical insight with first-hand accounts. In the Huey story, we glimpse both the promise and paradox of air mobility, speed, reach, and life-saving medevac on one rotor arc, noise, vulnerability, and the specter of a distant high-tech empire on the other. Chapter 1. Birth of a Workhorse. From medical chopper to multi-mission platform. The UH-1 traces its roots to a 1952 U.S. Army call for a turboshaft medical evacuation helicopter. Bell Helicopter's response, the Model 204, first flew in October 1956, powered by a single 860 HP Lycoming T-53 engine, lighter, more reliable, and less maintenance-hungry than piston forebears. Army evaluators loved its power-to-weight ratio and roomy cabin. In 1959, the prototype became Hu-1A, helicopter utility. Soldiers angled HU-1 into Huey. Bell later embraced the nickname, painting Huey on corporate brochures. Upgraded UH-1B and UH-1C variants soon sported a broader rotor, 1,100 shish per engines, and hardpoints for rockets and machine guns. By late 1965, Bell unveiled the UH-1D, stretching the cabin and swapping out two-bladed tail rotors for stronger units. This Delta carried a 12-man rifle squad, or 6 litters plus medics, in what looked like a flying delivery van. Chapter 2. Air Mobility Doctrine Takes Wing. Pentagon wagers on the vertical battlefield. Helicopter use in Korea proved the concept of aerial rescue, but Vietnam's geography, dense jungles, sparse roads, sudden elevation shifts, turned vertical lift from luxury to necessity. General Hamilton House's 1962 Housey Board recommended an air cavalry arm able to leapfrog static fronts. In July 1965, the 1st Cavalry Division, Air Mobile, arrived at Anke with 434 helicopters, half of them Hueys. The Battle of Ia Drang that November became the first large-scale clash where troop companies landed directly onto hot LZs under rotor cover. Lieutenant Colonel Bruce Crandall's Huey, call sign Snake Driver, braved withering fire to resupply pinned infantry, earning America's first helicopter-flown Medal of Honor. The Huey thus shifted tactics from road-bound convoy to three-dimension chess. Commanders could probe, feint, extract, and overwhelm unreachable positions if monsoon ceilings lifted and enemy anti-air didn't thicken. Chapter 3. Crew Chiefs, Door Gunners, and the Art of Improvisation. Gunships when utility turned predator. Initially unarmed dust-offs attracted potshots. Enterprising crew chiefs bolted M60s to outriggers. Others lashed 50 cals or 2.75-inch rocket pods to skid tubes. These field hacks evolved into factory-built UH-1C Frog gunships, packing twin 7-shot rocket launchers, quad M60s, and nose-mounted grenade launchers. Tactics emerged. Purple Haze companies, named for exhaust-borne smoke, flew daisy-chain orbits, hosing tree lines while slick Hueys dropped infantry. Life on the skids. For crew members, missions blurred into cycles of 20-minute hops and frantic turnarounds. Mechanics patched bullet holes with aluminum speed tape. Pilots taped crib sheets of LZ radio freaks to the instrument panel. If the RPM drop doesn't wake you, the door gunner will, joked W01 Tom Payne, who logged 1,200 hours with the 174th Assault Helicopter Company. Average combat life for a Huey airframe? About 1,100 flight hours, roughly 14 months in theater. Chapter 4. Dust Off, Medicine Against the Clock Golden Hour in Green Hell. In 1966, the U.S. Army formalized dedicated medevac units under the call sign Dust Off. Hueys stripped of seats, outfitted with litters, traumas kits, and a Red Cross, responded within minutes of a 9-line call. Pilots hovered into one-tree clearings or balanced skids on bomb craters while medics hauled bloodied grunts aboard. Statistics tell the impact. 97% of American wounded who reached Dustoff survived, double the World War II rate. Even Pavien and Viet Cong fighters occasionally received lifts when capture overlapped with compassion. Colonel Charles Kelly, Dustoff legend, was killed in July 1964 after refusing to leave an LZ under fire. His last transmission? When I Have Your Wounded became Dustoff Creed. Chapter 5, the soundtrack of War and Homecoming. Ride of the Valkyries, Rotor Edition. Hollywood etched the Huey into collective psyche. Apocalypse Now's surf scene gun run, We Were Soldiers, Platoon's night resupply. Veterans recall how the incoming whomp raised goose flesh or dread, depending on allegiance. North Vietnamese diaries describe the Huey as iron dragonfly, whose blades stirred red dust and the smell of America. Post-trauma echoes. Many vets confess that lawnmower backfires or ceiling fans echoing rotor beats still flash them to LZ X-ray. Conversely, ex-medics describe Huey blade slap as a lullaby, proof help is coming. Such duality embodies Vietnam itself, machine as both angel and harbinger. Chapter 6, engineering a legend rotor system. Two-bladed, semi-rigid teetering, allowed quick blade folding, but imparted signature thump. Power plant, Lycoming T53L13, U1H variant, at 1400 HP. Speed and ceiling, cruise 110th, service ceiling 12,600 feet, though hot and high-density altitude often force derates. Capacity, 1 pilot, co-pilot, 2 crew chiefs, door gunners, plus 11 troops or 6 litters. Production, 16,000 Hueys built 1959 to 1987, over 7,000 served in Vietnam, 3,300 lost to all causes, over half to hostile fire. Simplicity underwrote survivability. Redundant hydraulics, self-sealing tanks on later models, and a cabin floor you could hose years' worth of mud and blood from. Chapter 7, Aftermath and Global Legacy. When Saigon fell in April 1975, the last U.S. aircraft off the embassy rooftop was a Marine CH-46, yet the images of fleeing ARVN Hueys ditching into the South China Sea became emblematic of war's chaotic end. Many captured UH-1s served Vietnam People's Army aviation until the 1990s. Meanwhile, surplus Hueys ferried oil crews in the Gulf, battled wildfires in California, and policed jungles in Colombia. In humanitarian hands, they dropped food after 2004's tsunami and raised antennas in earthquake-shattered Haiti. Few airframes enjoy a second act so long or storied. Chapter 8, Museums, Memorials, and the Huey Today across America restored Hueys perch on plinths outside VFW posts, noses down as if forever approaching an LZ. The Smithsonian's Udvar Hazy Center displays a combat veteran UH-1H suspended in mid-hover. Not-for-profit groups like Huey Vets keep airworthy examples touring air shows, letting gray-haired door gunners fire blanks over cornfields, therapy via throttle quadrant. For younger generations, rotor rides evoke Instagram goggle selfies. Yet inside the cockpit, time collapses. Cyclic trembling turbine whine at 6,600 RPM, and that primal wop-wop carrying both nostalgia and warning. Conclusion: more than a machine. In Vietnam's dense chronicle of ideology, decolonization, and human cost, the Huey emerges as a paradoxical hero. It democratized air power, shrank battlefields, and saved thousands with minutes to spare. In the same sweep of rotors, it magnified America's footprint, enabling deep incursions whose strategic worth remains debated. Perhaps novelist Tim O'Brien framed it best. The sound mixed promise and dread, the way church bells mix wedding and funeral. To study the Huey is to confront that mixture, to honor the engineers, pilots, medics, and infantry who pinned hope on a 48-foot rotor arc, and to ponder how technology forever alters the human landscapes it enters, sometimes for rescue, sometimes for ruin, always leaving legend in its wake. The Bell UH-1 Iroquois, commonly known as the Huey, was a multi-purpose utility helicopter famous for its widespread use during the Vietnam War. Bell developed the powerful helicopter in the mid-1950s and produced more than 16,000 units between 1955 and 1976, over 7,000 of which served in Vietnam. The aircraft were used primarily for troop and cargo transport, medical evacuations, and aerial attack. Hueys have also been used in civilian roles such as firefighting, humanitarian aid efforts, research operations, and search and rescue duties. The Huey was developed as the Bell Model 204 and incorporated lessons learned during the Korean War about helicopter operations. A larger Model 205 was introduced in 1961, more familiarly known as the UH-1D. Hueys have served with all branches of the U.S. military, as well as multiple U.S. government agencies and at least 48 foreign countries. Many Hueys are still in use today. The museum's aircraft, a UH-1H model, was the most produced Huey variant, with 5,435 units manufactured. The museum's Huey was delivered to the U.S. Army in March 1970. It served in Vietnam with the 101st Air Cavalry and the 158th Attack Helicopter Battalion, B Company. It flew approximately 1,400 combat hours before returning to the United States in March 1972. It later served with the Alaska National Guard until 1994. Then with the Search and Rescue Unit of the King County Sheriff's Office until its donation to the Museum of Flight in 2003. Following an extensive restoration effort by Northwest Helicopters in 2011 and 2012, the museum's Huey now appears as it did during its service in Vietnam with the U.S. Army 158th AHB. Power plant. Lycoming T-53L13 engine. The Bell UH-1 Iroquois, commonly known as the Huey, was a multi-purpose utility helicopter, famous for its widespread use during the Vietnam War. Bell developed the powerful helicopter in the mid-1950s and produced more than 16,000 units between 1955 and 1976, over 7,000 of which served in Vietnam. The aircraft were used primarily for troop and cargo transport, medical evacuations, and aerial attack. Hueys have also been used in civilian roles such as firefighting, humanitarian aid efforts, research operations, and search and rescue duties. The Huey was developed as the Bell Model 204 and incorporated lessons learned during the Korean War about helicopter operations. A larger Model 205 was introduced in 1961, more familiarly known as the UH-1D. Hueys have served with all branches of the U.S. military, as well as multiple U.S. government agencies and at least 48 foreign countries. Many Hueys are still in use today. The museum's aircraft, a UH-1H model, was the most produced Huey variant, with 5,435 units manufactured. The museum's Huey was delivered to the U.S. Army in March 1970 and served in Vietnam with the 101st Air Cavalry and the 158th Attack Helicopter Battalion, AHB, B Company. It flew approximately 1,400 combat hours before returning to the United States in March 1972. It later served with the Alaska National Guard until 1994, then with the Search and Rescue Unit of the King County Sheriff's Office until its donation to the Museum of Flight in 2003. Following an extensive restoration effort by Northwest Helicopters in 2011 and 2012, the museum's Huey now appears as it did during its service in Vietnam with the U.S. Army 158th AHB. Power plant. Lycoming T-53L13 engine. Manufacturer Bell Helicopter. Model 205 UH-1H Iroquois year. Model 204 XH-40 prototype first flight 1956. Model 205 first flight 1961.